I call it the basement video. But they are sitting in a basement, and they have these secret knocks in how to get in there,
They're
and
all sharing like
each
testimonies
person.
of Jehovah in there.
Yeah. Yes,
Seen that one.
and for everyone, and for everyone comes in there, there's a different story, and then there are some people that doesn't show up because they supposedly given up their faith, and in the absolutely end, the video is, the military is kicking in the door and coming in, and they don't find anyone there, and there is a segment of these Jehovah's Witnesses are running through the forest, and there's this SWAT team following them, and supposedly they are surrounded, and when the SWAT team comes there, they are invisible. They are not there anymore.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel, Find the Alternative. I'm your host, Adam, 10-year member of the WMSCOG in Salt Lake City, our good old Korean Doomsday Cult friends across the pond. And again, I have another former Jehovah's Witness member who's actually in Europe, and we're going to ask him some questions. We're going to talk about his story. His name is Erick, and I'm going to turn the time over to him briefly so he can introduce himself, and then we'll just kind of get into the questions here. So the floor is yours, Erick.
Thank you. My name is Erick. I'm in my mid-40s. I'm third generation Jehovah's Witness. And I only left a few years ago. I'm not disfellowshipped. I'm not disassociated, but I am what you would call a fader. And so far it worked out pretty good, but with, of course, some complications when you have one foot in each camp.
Yeah, I could see that would probably be a really hard place to step back and, try to separate yourself mentally, emotionally from the organization. If you have your foot in multiple camps, especially if it's a multi-generational thing, I think it makes it even harder. For instance, like I'm 6th generation LDS. And so naturally when I left the cult, my tendency was to go back to my roots, which was the LDS faith. But I kind of stood my ground. I was like, no, it doesn't make any sense. But it's hard because when your family and your whole community and you're generational in a religion, it makes it really hard to step away and just do what's right for you,
Yeah.
So let's start from the beginning then, Erick. How were you introduced? I mean, generational, right? But for maybe those who don't know what that means as far as being a Jehovah's Witness, what does it mean third generational? How exactly were you involved in the I almost said WMSCOG. How are you involved in the Jehovah's Witness?
Well, my parents and my grandparents have all Jehovah's Witness, all my uncles, all my aunts, not all my cousins. Some of my cousins have never took a stand, never got baptized, but when it comes to my siblings, they are all in, and one of them is quite high up in the organization in my country. So like you said, if you are already baptized, you already entered the trap. So there is no easy way to get out of it without I like to say that freedom comes with a price,
True.
And it's for some it's higher than others. I would say in generally compared to many other people, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I don't, maybe one shouldn't complain. Of course, I had my issues as well, but all in all, I feel I come out somewhat what's called unscathed compared to many others I listen to. I've not turned into drugs. I've not turned into alcohol. I'm not a criminal. Today I'm happily remarried, and I have children. I have a good job, good career. I have good friends. I've started. Many Jehovah's Witnesses, when they leave, they have a tendency to turn atheist, which is very sad. I've been lucky enough to keep my faith, although I had to start Christianity over again,
For sure.
like the big reset button. And you know, I have to, for me, I have to consider everything I've been taught about Christianity in my life has been a lie. So, you know, you have to start from scratch, which is a very humbling experience, if
Oh
I
yeah.
may say so. You know, it's a lot of taboo you grow up with. You know, you know, the arch enemy of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I think for LDS as well. You know, it's the Catholic Church,
And WMSCOG.
and yeah, and you know, I've been to Catholic masses several times, and I see no wrong with them. I think they're quite lovely. Even the Catholic Church, they will use the name of Jehovah once in a while.
Yeah.
Which I was flabbergasted about. I was sitting there like, what?
Yeah.
But the Jehovah's Witnesses said that they don't use that. But that's not true at all.
Yeah, they almost have to create this false sense of it's us versus everybody, you know? And obviously that's a control mechanism because usually in these kind of groups they get rid of all gray areas because
Mm.
if you get rid of the gray areas it means you can't relate to somebody at all. And
No.
once you're in a religion where there is no gray area, where there's like room to disagree, room to work things out, room to have different ideas, that's when you get into these kind of organizations where they just see everything black and white. And if you're not black or you're not white or vice versa, then they have to automatically force you into one camp or another. And a lot of times it's like they take the most arbitrary thing and they put you in the camp of like the enemy, even though you disagree 90% or 98%, they have to push you into the other camp because you're not 100%.
Yeah.
So walk me through when you're baptized in Jehovah's Witness, what does that look like? How old are you? For instance, when I was in the LDS faith, they baptized me at 8 years old. How does that look like in the Jehovah's Witness faith?
You can be baptized from you are. I heard someone who's 7, 8 years old, but I was a late one. I'm not quite entirely sure why. I never really ran into any trouble growing up per se. You know, I was not reprimanded or anything like that. But I was actually 18 when I got baptized, so I was quite late. So yeah, I never thought of why it took me so long time to get baptized. But
is it a faith-based thing, or is it like, hey, you're this certain age, you need to get baptized, or is it based on as soon as you want to proclaim the organization, that's when your parents are like, hey, let's get him baptized?
It's supposed to be when you proclaim it yourself, and of course Jehovah's Witnesses claim they don't do child baptisms, but of course that's when you have a 10-year-old, you know, getting baptized. You know, it's what do you know about the world? I have a son that age myself, and I mean I can barely send him to the supermarket to buy 2 bottles of milk with him
Right.
not getting it right. So how are you gonna say that, you know, you can give your life for this when you
To an
can't even
organization
go?
that they have no idea what it even is.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So
So when you were
so
18, was that when you basically came to the conclusion, hey, this is the truth, this is what I want to do with my life, this is where God is? Or walk me through that.
probably a combination of every other friend I had in the organization started getting baptized then. I think in my friends group, many of us was around 17, 18 when we decided to get baptized. Of course, a little bit of pressure from family and so on. But I would say at that time I was all in, and I believed in it. I always had this unbalanced, you know, periods where sometimes I've been all in, like very extreme, and then it just fizzle away, and you have long periods of time where you don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. It's kind of like a roller coaster, up, down, up, down,
Mm.
up, down. Which, I mean, it's common. I mean, we're humans, right? We can only sustain so much at a time, and so, naturally it's called life, you know, but
Yeah,
and if you're in a cult, they're like, "Oh, that's Satan," right? Or that's your
yeah.
sinful nature. That's the whispers of the devil. And it's like, no, that's just life. Sometimes you question your faith. Sometimes you doubt. Like that is just how it
Hmm.
works. I would argue doubt's a useful tool to help you double check and make sure you're in the right path, because without doubt, you would never doubt anything and you'd fall into a lot of traps. So doubt is
Yeah.
actually a very useful tool to make sure you're on the right path. But of course, to a cult, it's a very dangerous thing because you could leave the organization and find something better, and they don't want that.
No, no, they want you in as soon as they can. I mean, recently now, they are very into getting, children baptized as soon as possible. Because once you enter the trap, it's there is really no way out. I mean, there is a way out, but it comes with severe consequences.
Yeah. Sorry. Goodness. Something in my throat. So, when it comes to your time in the Jehovah's Witness, was there ever a time where you felt pressured, where you had to put the church first in front of an important event in your life? Like, let's say you wanted to go to school, or you wanted to get a job, or you had some sort of dream or aspiration, but you realized, oh, this wouldn't please Jehovah, and now I need to just forsake myself and just follow the governing body.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, education, of course, which has been, higher education, university, has always been looked down on. Um, so of course that I mean, it was an option, but you were so guilted not to do it. So I went the like most Jesuits, I went to a technical school. It's usually a 1 to 3 years education, depending a little bit, and that's kind of okay uh, by the witnesses. I will say that um, if you compare European Jehovah's Witnesses, of course, Europe have different cultures, but compared to to the US, it's I would maybe say it's a little bit more relaxed there in one way. It's it's not so fanatic, if I can use that word.
Hmm.
But still, of course, higher education
Taboo.
is looked down on.
Controversial.
Yeah, yeah. Ironically, one of my siblings have 2 bachelor degrees and still serve as an elder today. So I don't know. I don't know how he got away with that, but
Well, it sounds like they're relaxing on those rules anyway, from what I've heard.
yeah. But not when my brother went to school. No, they were still very hard on that. So and as far as I know, while he went to university, he still was allowed to serve as a ministerial servant. I think it was because he pioneered at the same time, and that's how he got away with it. Plus, he went to a congregation where we had extended family members. So I guess in that way, it was kind of okay.
A little bit of nepotism.
So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of rules for you, rules for you, rules for them.
Hmm.
In the organization, I'm an elder son, and my you know uncles are elders, and my grandfather is or was an elder, and and you there is no doubt that you get away with more things than if you were just what you would call a rank and file member.
Yeah.
um
And I would say too, to the WMSCOG members who are probably watching this, I'll just kind of explain what pioneering is. Pioneering is basically when you go and preach a set amount of hours. Goodness. Yeah, pioneering is when you preach a set amount of hours, and an elder is basically like an overseer in WMSCOG terms, or in LDS terms, basically like a bishop. He's over the congregation. So
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Adam.
No, it's okay.
I you know, when you talk with this, you know, you're so used to talking with this cult language, which again should be you know, that should for anyone be a hint that you are in a cult. You know, when you have your own little language that nobody else outside understands.
Yeah. And
So.
it's kind of funny. I'm like translating to different cult languages for the viewers here. Like, if you're LDS, here's what this means. If they're WMSCOG, here's what this means, so we can all follow along together.
we should make a map.
I know.
I think that would be very useful.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the 144,000, I know I didn't ask you this. I didn't write this question, but I'm just curious. With the 144,000, did you ever think that you were one of them? Did you ever think you were chosen at any time?
No.
Did you know anybody that thought they were chosen?
Yes.
And isn't it kind of a weird dynamic to have people in the same organization that is claimed to be loved and led by Jehovah, but some are chosen and some aren't?
But you know, in Jehovah's Witnesses terms, it's not really a big of deal. Okay, they're going to heaven while I'm going to be in paradise and ride around on a panda. You know, I want the panda.
Pandas.
They are very obsessed with the panda. And, you know, I wanted the panda. You know, I wanted the tiger and the panda. You know, I'm not going to lie. You know, it's what's not to like.
Yeah.
But the one I knew that was anointed were very elderly people. You know, was elderly, and they probably died around age 14 or something. So I never had any, you know, real talk with them. And but I mean, it's ironic. I will probably come to that, but it's, you know, it's these numbers are supposed to go down, right? But they keep going up, and you know, in my city there is a young gentleman who has taken the emblems for the last 4 years now, since he was 16. Now he's around 20. So I mean, if I have understood the theology correctly, you know, he has to die before paradise comes. You know, when they are all collected, then everything will end. I might be wrong with what I'm saying here. People will probably correct me in the chat, but but generally, I don't think many Jehovah's Witnesses have a clear view of this, and you will usually see that in the comment section. But I mean, if you know, I'm in my mid-40s now, and he's barely 20 years old, so okay, that means I'm going to live my life out most likely without seeing the end. So
gotcha. And
it's a bit odd.
So with WMSCOG, it's kind of interesting because WMSCOG, they basically say that the 144,000, they're actually separate from the Great Multitude, but they're not going to die. They're going to ascend to heaven alive, and that the Great Multitude is basically going to die. And so it kind of creates this inner rat race where I remember thinking of people that were higher up in the church, and then when they would leave, I'd be relieved and just be like, oh, sweet, like that spot is opened up for 104,000, like wedge in there before something else happens, you know? And so I think it creates this, you know, because they preach unity and they scream unity, right? Oh, we need to love and we need to serve and all this kind of stuff. But yet they create this inner turmoil, this inner rat race where people are stepping over each other, stepping on each other to get to this prized position. And it just creates chaos because, as you know, it's a lot easier to control people when there's that kind of chaos, right? When they feel isolated inside the organization, even though they're doing everything right. Let's see.
But this was with Jehovah's Witnesses as well, because until, you know, the teaching was that the generation of 1914 would never die. You know, and as you know, and this is again, I'm not sure if the people who saw 1914 was supposed to be anointed or not. I never been able to find a real answer to that. But let's, as an example, I tell people that, let's say a little boy born in America in 1900, he would then be 14-year-old in 1914, and let's say he started taking the bread and wine during our memorial. He would be 125 years old today. I mean, there are nobody that old.
No.
There are still people arguing with me in the chat. There are still people alive since 1914. I don't understand their mathematics. It's even if you were not anointed and just born, I don't know, 1913, you're still 115, 116 years old today.
Yeah.
If my math is not completely messed up here, but it's again, I think the oldest person today is 16 years old.
Yeah.
Or so.
So it's a failed prophecy for sure.
It's a double failed prophecy, basically. The problem again behind there, as without getting too technical, their mathematics of Jehovah's Witnesses was that Jerusalem was destroyed in 607. Therefore, with the 70 years and so on, it's a bit strange mathematics. But the original founder, Russell, he actually came to 1913, but he had done a mathematical mistake by the year 0 is also counted. So then later on, they could backtrack it to 1914 to make it look good with the World War One.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was that, again, for Russell, the end was supposed to come in 1914, and then they changed it to, I don't know, the gentle times or something. I fell a little bit out of the theology
Just moving
over
the
the years.
goalposts. That's all they're doing.
Yeah, and then but there's no historical evidence that Jerusalem was destroyed in 586, and there is very good scientific evidence that shows that it was destroyed in 586. So then again, you're off with 22 years, right?
Yeah.
And I tell witnesses, if you want to see the evidence for yourself, you can book a trip to London in the UK. You can go to British Museum. It's free entry, by the way. So even the most poor Jehovah's Witness can enter the museum. And you go to I guess it's the Babylonian or Mesopotamian section. And there are several tablets there that will prove that the destruction was 586. Plus, there are many other scientific evidence they found. It's only Jehovah's Witnesses that will claim 607. So again, when that fails, the generation of 1914 fails, and then in 2010 they changed the doctrine again to what they call an overlapping generation. So whoever was of the 1914 generation that was maybe did something naughty, maybe they had a cigarette, so they got drunk a little bit too often, and so on, then they were not, then God chose them away. So then in 2010, the understanding was that someone else could take their place, and now that's why you see the anointed people take the bread and wine during Jehovah's Witness memorial explodes.
Yeah.
They have some official numbers. I think it's around 20,000. I don't quite recall. I think the numbers are double. I think they have downgraded the numbers exceptional. English term. Yes, I think it's. I think the number is way higher, but they can't put it. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 40,000 who takes, but of course they can't. They can't reveal that.
Yeah. Well, and typically cults inflate numbers just like they inflate facts, history, all that kind of stuff. And what's kind of crazy is like their whole thesis of who's chosen, who's not, it's all just hearsay, subjective. God revealed it or God told the governing body, which to those who don't know what the governing body is basically like the head office of WMSCOG or the general authorities of the LDS Church. It's basically the same premise. One thing I wanted to ask you, because I think one thing that everybody knows about Jehovah's Witness is their weird no blood rule. Were you or anyone that you know ever affected by that rule negatively?
You sent me the notes earlier, and I've been thinking about it while I've been driving around today doing errands. I have a family member who was injured in a traffic accident when she was quite young, and the parents did not allow blood transfusion. The kind of good thing in Northern Europe is that if there is a medical case where it's life and death for a child and the parents are interfering in it, the hospital can basically temporarily remove your parental rights. Yes. So they take that away until the child is stable. So that family member were able to get blood and is alive today.
Thank goodness.
But if it wasn't, would be dead 100%.
And that to me is being a dad, right? I'm a dad of 3. And to me, that is just completely crossing the boundary of like, I get where they get it from. I mean, I don't get where they get it from. I know where they get it from, like Acts chapter 15. But it's clearly talking about eating blood. It's not talking about blood transfusions. It's not talking about giving blood. It's not talking, it has no context of that. And I know they'll try to flubber it away and be like, well, you know, and they'll make some connection and of why it is what it is, but there's really no evidence to suggest it. But I couldn't imagine. Well, actually, I could because I've been in a cult. But I'm just thinking about it from that member's perspective, right? Having to choose my God, which in this case is basically the governing body, let's be real, over my child's well-being, and having to make that decision. I mean, that is a parent's worst nightmare. Not only, number one, having that severe of an accident with your child being involved in it and severely hurt, that's horrifying in and of itself. But to add fuel to that fire and be like, well, if I treat my kid the way they're wanting me to treat my child to get him better, I'm going against God. Like, that makes no sense. But when you're in the cult mind, you think it makes perfect sense because that's what you believe. That's what you've been indoctrinated and brainwashed to think your entire life. But and I can relate to it a little bit because, I mean, when my wife was having contractions with our kids, I had to go to the church. They wouldn't allow me to stay with her. I had to go to the church for worship, and I had to leave her in a hospital room, in a dark hospital room with contractions, and I had to go do stuff at the church because, you know, they have this thing where it's like, if you just listen to us, you listen to God, then everything will go well, right? But if you try to go your own way, what do you think is going to happen? You know, and so they guilt trip you like that, and it's just not okay. It's not.
No, I mean, for me, the blood doctrine is nothing else than a hunting regulation in my personal belief. You know, it's normal there. You know, in my country, hunting is quite common. Same as where you are. You know, you hunt white tails, we hunt red deer where I live. You know, it's normal when you shoot a deer, the animal dies, it falls over, and the first thing you usually do is take a knife and stick it in the neck to drain its blood. It's the most it's just a normal thing to do, and that's what it's all about. But you know, in many countries, you know, it's, you know, they will save the blood and eat it, and that's, you know, that's where it's about. You know, you know, it's crazy because if you speak to, and I've spoken to very I would say radical, but very orthodox Jews, that follows the rules, 120% and a bit more,
Mm-hmm.
they have to have their neighbor come in and turn on the light on and off on Saturdays. They're non-Jewish. The
Yeah,
non-Jewish neighbor have to come and turn off their light
it's a good
because they
neighbor.
cannot do it. Yeah, but I mean, but even they, as fanatic as they are, they still allow blood transfusion because they understand that life is holy.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
Where
precious.
the Jehovah's Witnesses will gladly sacrifice their own children. It's no, to me, and maybe people get a bit pissed there, but I consider it child sacrifice. It's not. It's no different to the Israelites who sacrificed their children to Baal.
Yeah, no, I agree. You're basically sacrificing
Uh,
your kids to the governing body.
yeah, I mean, it's fine if you as an adult don't want blood and you
Yeah, that's
take the
your own choice.
consequences of it. Okay, I won't agree, but it's your thing. But
Yeah,
for a child who's not able to choose, no, it's not okay.
exactly.
And I never been comfortable with that stuff. Yes, I did. Jehovah's Witnesses, they have this no blood card. Um, I did have it, but I made sure it was in the absolute bottom of my wallet,
Mm-hmm.
the absolute hardest place. But if my parents or someone asked me if I had it, okay, I could take it out and show it to them. Oh yeah, I have it with me. But I would make sure it was hard to find for a paramedic.
Right.
Most people have it in their front of their wallet or this see-through uh, part, but it never sat well with me, and we can probably come to that later. But that's always been the same story through my Jehovah's Witnesses career, is that I there are some things I never agree with, but I was just too much of a coward to confront it.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you're too much of a coward. I think you were just brainwashed, like everybody.
Yeah,
And that's the thing is, they make it so hard to think for yourself. They make it so hard for you to make a rational, logical decision for your own well-being because the whole premise is you rely on the governing body. Your thoughts are sinful. Your thoughts are not adequate. Your thoughts are not helpful to you. Only the
mm,
governing body's thoughts, only the governing body's words. That's the only thing you need to worry about. And
yeah,
it's like that in every organization. So I don't think you were like dumb or stupid or something or cowardice. It's like, no, you're brainwashed.
mm,
Your whole life has been molded to rely on these people to make decisions
yeah,
for you, and you trusted them, which is a normal human function, is trusting. And it really makes me angry that people use our trust and they use it against us, and that drives me
yeah.
insane. Um, moving on here. When you were in the Jehovah's Witness, was there any leadership decision or any leadership teaching that you were like, this doesn't sound good. I don't want to do that. I guess this kind of is a good segue into that question.
Eh, while I was young, um, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. It was just a lot of things that did not make sense, especially with the dates. Like, okay, 1914. Oh, okay, they came to that number, and you know, how did they get to that number? But I never really discovered it. Okay, they were very. It must be true because World War One started, and I don't know, 20 million people died. It had to be something, but you never really went into it. And later on, now that I've really researched it, and I researched particularly the two, Russell and Rutherford, I, I mean, these people are insane. I mean, it's snake oil salesmen on high level.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, their doctrine. I would say their doctrines are even more crazier than the ones of Joseph Smith. I mean, I think Joseph Smith was a brilliant businessman in one thing. You say that you in the early Americas, you say that you found gold in your backyard. I mean, it's at the same time you start your own religion. You know,
Yeah.
people will come and try look for gold, and then they will just join your religion and stay there. I mean, it's a fantastic sales pitch.
Yeah. Absolutely. When you were active and doing everything like pioneering, going to the meetings, going to the memorial, which for WMSCOG members, memorial is basically Passover, and for LES members, that's basically the sacrament.
Mm.
When you were doing all these things, right, in the cult terms, you were doing everything right, but yet,
Mm.
did you ever feel that feeling of like, hey, I'm doing everything right, I'm doing everything that they're saying, but yet I still feel isolated, I still feel lonely, I still feel inadequate, and I still feel hopeless, even though on paper I should be good, I should be joyful, happy, peaceful, all this stuff, but
Mm.
you feel worse than when you weren't even doing it.
All above. Yeah, I mean, I'm for new Jehovah's Witnesses. You have to understand, when I grew up in the, I'm born in the in early 80s, but of course, I come to age in the 90s and early 2000. Jehovah's Witnesses was a completely different ball game than it is today. Today you meet elders that are 22, 20, 23 years old. That would be unheard of back then. You had to be minimum 30, 35 even to become a ministerial servant. The requirements were very high back then. I mean, back then we had to study. Today they just watch movies on their meetings. And just
Dang.
read paragraphs. Um, but yeah, I mean, I tried my best. Not to, I have a sidetrack, but I tried my best. I tried do ministry, but at the same time, I had school. Um, I had a little part-time job, because when I grew up, we didn't have much money. So I had some part-time jobs here and there. Did paid incredibly little compared to the job I did, but okay, I had some pocket money, and of course, my problem was that I was not properly diagnosed with dyslexia before I was almost 16 years old.
Gotcha.
So, growing up, studying the Jehovah's Witness material was an absolutely nightmare. After school, my brain was completely fried
I
because
bet.
I always. So you try to do study, you try to do ministry, in the congregation, and this is probably because I was an elder's boy. I was allowed to do microphones. I did a literature in the back before, in the good old days.
Yeah.
We in the back of the Kingdom Hall, we delivered out the Watchtower and the Wait magazines to people to give out on the doors, like Jehovah's Witnesses are probably the most known for.
Yeah.
The door knocking. So I was allowed to do that, and that gave me quite a lot of fulfilling. A bit later in life, I did step up my game. I would lead this nothing official, but like an unofficial youth group where we would study for the Sunday Watchtower study.
Mm-hmm.
I should probably explain this to people who are not Jehovah's Witnesses. For the most part, either Saturday or Sundays, there is a meeting which usually contains of a public talk first. Used to be an hour, and now I think it's shortened down to 25 minutes or something. And after that, there is they call it the public Watchtower discussion, which of course is not a discussion of all at all. It's just you read the paragraph and you answer basically what's there. Maybe someone who's a little bit more experience will add in a scripture or something. But
Yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah, I tried my best, but I really started struggling with depression and always worried. Never felt good enough, and I will not put too much blame on my parents, but maybe I'm getting a bit sidetracked there. But I think I want to add it while I remember it. The problem with Jehovah's Witnesses is that you don't really have much time, quality time with your parents. This is something I'm really stressing today with my kids. Spend time with them, do activities and so on. When I grew up, my mother had a job, but later on she became very sick and eventually got disabled. While my father was, as far as I remember, always been an elder in the congregation. And back then you also had, he was the, what you would call I have to see if I remember it in English, the theocratical ministry school, which is usually be on a Tuesday or Wednesday. So he had that. So everyone who had a talk on the platform, he would have to rate them and he would have to go through their material. Back then we also had the book study, which it was actually quite nice. We would meet in people's private home and study certain books. It would usually only be about an hour, and then there was usually cake and coffee afterwards, so soda, which was a great time. Ironically, I think 90% of all the books we studied back then are now obsolete. It's now what you would call it's old light, basically. So it's it's those books are burned and forgotten, basically.
Yeah.
To
make
way, but also,
for
yes, and of course, my father, being an elder and so on, he was required to go not only to have public talks in our congregation, but in other congregations as well. All that stuff combined with the family and my mother not always being in the best shape, and so on, and just, of course, just a basic job. There was not much time to teach your children much skills, which is kind of one of my little issues with my father today. I like, how do you use tools? How do you use a chainsaw? How do you use a trailer?
keep your
How do you speak to
that kind of stuff.
how do you speak to women? How are you supposed to behave like a man? How are you supposed to be a husband,
a provider?
Yes, and how to fill your taxes. All this nonsense I had to. Well, it's not nonsense, but all this stuff I had to learn on my own. And of course, if I knew a lot of these things, I wouldn't have to make so many mistakes. And if I had a little bit more common sense, I probably wouldn't get married back then.
Yeah.
It probably come into that later. And when we come to where I started partying with Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah. And that kind of is a good segue into, when did you start realizing that the Jehovah's Witness wasn't the truth, and it wasn't, because you guys call yourself the truth, that someone that's similar to the WMSCOG, they call themselves the truth. When was it that you started realizing, hey, something just doesn't feel right, something isn't clicking, something's wrong here? Walk us through that whole scenario.
There has always been something wrong. I attended quite a few different congregations, and I've seen how people been treated. Many people been treated extremely poor. They needed help. They needed maybe just some help with a car, or help with their house, or just someone coming by and talk with them. Or they did some sort of mistake and they were punished severely for it. Either this fellowship kicked out or being, public humiliated on the stage during a meeting, and I had a dear friend of mine who went through a divorce and a child custody case, and the things I saw there from the elders is it's a long story, so we won't go into it, but
Of course.
it's absolutely horrendous. And later on, when I started going against several what you call elder bodies, each congregation have their own elder body, and when I started to tell them off, basically, they did not like that, and that's probably where it started. I didn't leave. So essentially, in the first, I could say, I didn't leave Jehovah's Witnesses because of the belief or the doctrinal system. I left it because they treated me and others as rubbish. That is the summary of it. All this, and my first marriage was not much of a success. We were very different, but of course, when you don't know any better, and I basically married the first woman who gave me attention.
Yeah.
So, because I didn't know any better.
Right.
I never learned how to be a man. I never, you're not allowed to date in Jehovah's Witnesses. You date to marry. So I married that person within a year, and it did not work out at all. But then you're married. There's no way out, right?
Yeah.
And the marital problems kept going on, and my economy was not good at all.
Was she a witness too?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, marrying without your faith is
No.
it's a very big no. Regardless of what other Christian type you are, Jehovah's Witnesses are the only one.
Yep.
There is no other thing.
Right.
So what it all comes down to is the year of 2016, when Erick loses his job after 12 years in the company, and the job market back then was extremely poor where I lived. So basically, for almost a year, I was unemployed. I lived off some benefits and some money I managed to save. The good thing with Jehovah's Witnesses, I would give them in this case, is that they do teach you to live within your means. So in one way it went well, but as I tell people, it was a very rough year. Money was very low, and like I was just praying each night, please don't get any dental issues. Please, don't let my washing machine die on me.
Or
yeah.
or whatever the case is, yeah.
I mean, it's absurd thinking back to it, but you had enough. I had a small apartment back then, and luckily I was almost debt free on that one. If I had a higher mortgage, I would be in big trouble.
Yeah.
The thing when you are unemployed like that is that, compared to the Jehovah's Witnesses rat race, that's the thing with Jehovah's Witnesses, they keep you occupied
Constantly
24/7.
Yeah.
I think it's by design. You don't have time to
think,
research, you don't have time to think, you don't have time to, they always says, oh, you have to meditate over these things, but when you're supposed to meditate over these things, you never have time for this. And back then, I had enough with surviving back in 2016. I was doing dumpster diving in my local supermarket at night, and poaching ducks illegally in my park. It was a rough year. It's not everything I did that year I'm proud of today, but I can laugh about it today.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. You did what you had to do to survive. But I the year turned into 2017. My marriage was going worse and worse. I started drinking more and more. I had more and more mental issues. I would usually sit up all night, go to bed around 5 or 6 in the morning, usually after drinking a heavy load of vodka, even just to fall asleep. And I thought to myself, this can't be it. This cannot be my life. There has to be something better. I was starting having fantasy about just becoming, escaping to Asia and just become an English teacher or something. I was just
running away.
the desperations, kept on coming. But early 2017, I managed to get a job as a contractor, and I knew that they would only keep. We were 3 or 4 people, and I knew they would only keep one of us for the permanent job. And it was a good job. It was a very well paying job, particularly since I don't really have that high education or that high experience.
Mm-hmm.
And working in the tech industry, I was out for almost a year, so my knowledge was almost obsolete. You in the tech industry, you have to keep yourself updated.
Yeah.
Every day. So I came to the conclusion that I need to start a better life, regardless of what happens. So I decided to get divorced. I think me and my ex-wife was quite fed up anyway.
And is that a big
So
no in the organization, getting divorced?
yes, it is. You are allowed to separate, and you can by the law of Caesar, as they would call it. They compare it to Roman law. You can get divorced, but you are still considered married in the eyes of Jehovah. So you
Gotcha.
cannot get remarried. So you can be divorced on paper. Of course, they will still ostracize you. And if I had any privileges in congregation, they would definitely been taken away. So for sure. But I decided I cannot do this anymore. I can't be unemployed anymore. I'm gonna get sick. I was already, when I went to my doctor and took my my blood samples, these blood sugar was going up, cholesterol was going up. I mean, all the values were getting close to heart disease, to diabetes, to everything. My liver looked terrible.
Gotcha.
So I thought, okay. So I went for a divorce. I started working. I turned myself into a workaholic. I basically stopped all. I walked away from everything, and of course, with the consequences that all my friends started shunning me. Luckily, I did have this job, and this job also allowed me to travel a lot, which was fantastic, and it was almost unlimited overtime I could do. So a guy who has been poor for most of his life suddenly,
has the means
instead
to
of
do
bringing,
stuff.
yeah, I mean, instead of bringing home, I don't know, around 1,500 that I used to do, now you're taking home 4,000 or 5,000 grand a month. I mean, it's I can finally go out and eat on a restaurant again. I mean, it's a fantastic feeling.
Yeah, it is.
But of course, you cannot be a workaholic all your time. And I knew at some point I had to start facing my
Your
faith.
demons. Yeah.
Yes, and initially I was almost. I almost went back at some point before because I still was too brainwashed to do proper research, and I was too afraid to do it. In fact, I haven't done proper research before. I think around a bit mid COVID, I started doing proper research, and that's why I'm here today. But until then, I've just suppressed it. I knew I didn't believe the doctrines anymore. I knew I believed in God and the Bible, but I didn't believe in Jehovah's Witnesses anymore. I could not say that it was the truth. My parents did put a lot of pressure on me, and I did attend the last Jehovah's Witness convention in 2018, which was an international convention in my country. I met a lot of lovely people, especially some people from the US. But I mean, when I was going through the program, it's for non-Jehovah's Witnesses. It's a 3 days full day convention, and it's basically people from majority of your state or province. So it's probably everything from 20 to 40 congregations coming together. And yeah, for Jehovah's Witnesses, it's basically where people find their wives. To be quite honest, I think most people Jehovah's Witnesses meet their wife or spouse on the conventions. But anyway, I was sitting through the program, and I'm inside of me, I'm thinking, this is bullshit. This is this is nonsense. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but on the third day in the 2018 convention, I can't remember the name of it. I think it was Be Courageous. I could be wrong. There's a video series about the last days and it's supposed to be when Babylon the Great and the UN starts attacking Jehovah's Witnesses because they will not give up their religion or something. And there is people sitting in this bunker, or this basement rather. I call it the basement video, but they are sitting in a basement, and they have these secret knocks in how to get in there, and
all sharing like testimonies of Jehovah in there.
Yes, and for everyone comes in there, there's a different story, and then there are some people that doesn't show up because they supposedly given up their faith, and in the absolutely end, the video is, the military is kicking in the door and coming in, and they don't find anyone there, and there is a segment of these Jehovah's Witnesses are running through the forest, and there's this SWAT team following them, and supposedly they are surrounded, and when the SWAT team comes there, they are invisible. They are not there anymore. And I sat next to a lovely lady from the Midwest, and she was I'm sorry, she was such a sweet lady, but she was all in. And she was completely excited and crying and everything, and I'm sitting there like, this is the most stupid thing I ever seen in my life. Trying not to swear. but it was just so absurd. She was tearing up, and she was so happy, and I'm just sitting next to her. Of course I have to try not to be rude, but I'm just like, no. Like and that in 2018 was when I told myself, this is enough. And since then I've been to one memorial, and I was, just out of respect for a family member, I went to one Kingdom Hall 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
Actually, the hall I grew up in, which ironically, it's no new people there. It's probably 10 years since I visited that hall, and it's the same people, just 10 years older. It's the same elders, just 10 years older. There's maybe 1 or 2 new ones. One of them I grew up with, and to be honest, I think he's gay.
Mhm.
I'm quite certain that he's gay. I don't understand how he can manage that stuff since
In the organization, yeah.
yeah. Of course, I will never ask him about it, but I'm, he's a quite, he's a quite, he's a good-looking man. He has a good style. He has a good job. He has a home and car, and I mean, he's fully set. He's a bit older than me, but
Yeah.
I've never seen him ever with a woman, which is a little bit suspect to me. But
Yeah.
okay. I mean, some people are forever bachelor. I'm not
True.
knocking anyone who like to be single all their life, but it's a little
True.
bit, he goes to these Jehovah's Witnesses single meetups every year and apparently can never bag a wife, which is it's a bit suspicious to me, but okay.
Yeah. Or he just
Um,
doesn't see any future with any of them, which he's probably like, "What? This is all I got?" But when you were on your way out, even though you didn't fully research, were you ever scared of Armageddon coming? And you were like, "Oh, what if they're right and Armageddon comes?"
for a period of time, I will be honest and say I was, and I was pretty sure that I would not be worthy enough to come into paradise. But my thinking was, if I can help other people to come in paradise, and I can be a good Christian, maybe God will have some
Mercy.
grace with him. Yeah, maybe I will just be punished for a few years in wherever, and then I can be allowed to enter. I mean, it's a bit absurd thinking today, but that in my darkest times, that was my
That was your hope.
that was my hope. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I don't believe in any of their doctrines today.
Yeah.
And in particular, but I just have to shoot in because, and this is something most Jehovah's Witnesses don't know, because I'm not disfellowshipped. I haven't disassociated. I'm not labeled an apostate because I just fly under the radar, which I have done a little bit with purpose, of course, so I can have somewhat of a relationship with my family. But I also done it so I can try help people out of this mess, or at least plant some seeds for them to do their own research.
Absolutely.
But most Jehovah's Witnesses don't know that the teaching of Jehovah's Witnesses is that Jesus is not your mediator. The governing body is your mediator.
Right.
Jesus is only the mediator for the 144,000. Many witnesses. I asked a lot of people this question. Do you know? And I can back it up with
Publications, probably.
with publications. You can just Google it yourself. It's what I tell people. I have a little bit of a project I'm hoping to do. I'm trying to make some stickers with QR code, which would lead people to JW Facts.
Okay.
Which is probably the best web page to decode Jehovah's Witnesses, if they are willing to and I tell this to Jehovah's Witnesses that if you're on the YouTube section, mind you, if you're willing to spend 1 hour on JW Facts and be honest with yourself, and you will not believe it afterwards. If you spend an hour or two on JW Facts, I am certain that majority of people's faith will be gone, and that's probably why most witnesses don't dare when I challenge them to it, because I think they know deep down there are a lot of
Flaws.
flaws in their own doctrine, but they just push it away because the panda.
Yep.
I want the panda.
I want to ride the panda.
I don't care if 1914 is wrong. I don't care if blood is wrong. I don't know. I don't care if shunning is wrong. I just want my panda. I mean, that's and of course, I would say my goal is to put a sticker around where the youth of Jehovah's Witnesses hang out, because that they are my goal, to help them, to give them, a hope to, especially if they're not even baptized. You can get out of this. The moment you step into the bear trap, you are trapped. But if you avoid the baptism, then there's a good chance
you can walk away.
You can walk away. You can live the life that you want later on. So they are my goal. Instead of being almost 40 years old, wasted so many times, lost so many opportunities. You can leave this before you're 20 years old, potentially. You can go to university, you can get a good degree, you can find a healthy relationship, whatever that is to you. And not, I mean, I see people that are in my age and much older. I mean, I even see people who are 80 and 90 who leaves Jehovah's Witnesses. But, on my channel, I just have a video or two out. But I have a gentleman there I'm trying to help in the UK. He's in his mid 60s now. He has nothing. He has poor health. He has no job. His children are shunning him. All his congregation is shunning him. He knows it's the wrong thing, but so I mean, I would say that it's never too late to get out of this. But probably the price is a little bit less to pay if you are in a younger age.
I agree,
because you still have time to build up a career. When you're in 20s, 30s, even in your 40s. But if you are in your mid 60s, and
definitely hard.
For many witnesses, maybe not where I live, because I live in a socialist country, so the state kind of makes you pay into pension.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I met a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses from the US, and majority of them don't have health insurance. They don't have pension. They don't have a 401k.
Have retirement.
They don't. They don't have. They have not everything, because Panda and Paradise is just around the corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
As it has been for the last 140 years, since Russell.
Yeah, they don't have any future retirement, any future savings, anything like that. In fact, when it comes to the WMSCOG, that's kind of taboo and like forbidden. You can't have stocks. You shouldn't buy a home because that's considered worldly. You shouldn't seek getting better employment. You shouldn't seek, bettering yourself unless you can somehow serve the church with it. So there is no like retirement per se. And I'm sure people do, but it's just not encouraged openly, and there is a stigma to it, because I know these cults they're reactive, and I know there'll be some members here that will say on my channel like, oh, you're misinformed, you're this, you're that, and the other. It's like, okay, well, it's not what they, and here's the thing, it's not what they say, it's what they don't say. It's their actions, their reaction to you getting a home, to you getting a better job, to you having kids, to you getting retirement, life insurance, whatever the case is. And, so they won't openly come out. In some cases they will, like with stocks and crypto and that kind of stuff. Don't invest, don't do that. It's like gambling, blah, blah, blah. And with some things, they will just either make you lose blessings or privileges, or they'll make you feel different than others, or they might separate you from others socially, or whatever the case is. So they're very strategic about it. And so you have to be... I don't know if that's how the Jehovah's Witnesses are. They won't really say it out loud, but it's more of just like the stigma that's attached to certain things. It's like the unspoken rule kind of type deal with that.
They call it Bible principles. That's how they camouflage it.
Okay.
Your own Bible trained conscience.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But of course, most people understand that if you step out of line,
there's repercussions.
there are some consequences one way or another. The Korean cult you were a member of, was education also discouraged there?
It was back in the day because Armageddon's coming any day. Why not try and save souls instead of trying to get more education? But over the past 10 years, they've been getting a lot of flack for doing that. And so now it's like, oh, we never taught that. We have college clubs now. We have college campus clubs. We have all these different college things now. What are you talking about? That's slander. You're just a betrayer, etc. But it's like, we're not
same as Jehovah's Witnesses. Then it's now until this year. Now all of a sudden you can have you can go to university, which is ironic because so many people, including myself, were not allowed to go to university, and unless you were a special elders boy, then it was okay. Well, you were supposed to use that education for Bethel.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
use it for the gospel, for the mission. Yeah.
Yeah, or you Bethel and Jehovah's Witnesses is usually some sort of HQ.
Yeah.
Where you go and work for free, basically.
Yeah.
And
we would call that pastoral staff in the WMSCOG.
Yeah. Or like Sea Org for Scientology, it's the same thing.
Yeah. Although in certain areas of the pastoral staff, they do get paid, but a lot of it is just not paid, just servitude, doing whatever the church needs 24/7. In the Jehovah's Witness, did they forbid research? Like any articles, any, because they call them apostates, right? So obviously they don't favor people speaking out. So I assume.
No, I mean they want you to research, but of course they want you to research only with their books and material.
Oh, the approved material, and have the approved approved conclusion. Gotcha.
Yes. Of course, I can't remember exactly when. There's a few years ago, Bethel or the governing body basically sent out letters to all congregations around in the world to purge their libraries from a certain age. And JW has an app but it only goes back to, is it 71 or 76 or something now? It only goes back, it doesn't go that far back. So all the stuff from Russell and Rutherford and all that stuff has been purged. They throw it away, that of course on their app, it's like Stalin, you just remove the photos of the people that you executed, basically.
Yep, erase their names from history.
Yeah, and that's why they don't print so much anymore, because now they can just rewrite it. So many of the members that previously did this research, and they did find out that the organization was nonsense. Of course, I think that's why they left, because many that I've talked with. So that, I think that's why they purged all that material. But you can still find it, and for some people out there that still sits on these old books and so on, you can sell it for a fortune on eBay. Some of Russell books on eBay goes from everything from $600 to $900. So, I mean, I torched everything. I burned mine many years ago, unfortunately. So, I
could have been for you.
Yeah, I could have retired. I could have been sitting on the gold. I was sitting on the gold mine. I just torched it out of anger. Yes.
So kind of walking through. So you decided the organization is just complete hogwash. What was some steps that you took to kind of deconstruct from the lifetime of bad theology, brainwashing, conditioning? What was some steps that you took to better yourself and to make yourself more healthy, more knowledgeable, and process what happened?
Well, I finally got the courage to start research and watching YouTube videos. In beginning, that was horrendous, to be honest. It was every YouTube
Painful.
channel I watched, I was like, I sitting in front of my screen, swearing at Lloyd Evans, what a dimwit, But of course now everything he he said, he can back up.
Yeah.
Like, so now he's an atheist, so me and him doesn't see everything the same, which is fine.
Yeah.
But
We're all
but
entitled to our
but
own opinion.
and when you leave, of course, or you fade out like I did, you will lose your social circle. I was hoping I would manage to keep it, but that was a little bit silly of me, maybe. And for people who are planning to leave, just start making new friends outside now. Start building a network. I didn't do this, which was a big mistake on my side. I was hoping these people would come eventually and visit me, and we would be able to find some sort of
Common ground.
middle. Yeah, but you can forget about that. When you leave, you will lose your friends. That's just how it is. It's sad, but and I
It's a
know maybe
cult.
some people say, yeah, but maybe some people will manage. I have one or two that I can speak with once in a while, but I can't express what I really think.
Which isn't really a
But
friend, right? If you can't
no,
express how you
no,
feel or think, that's not really a friendship.
yeah, and I had people coming over to me after I left. People I thought I had a long time. No, people I thought I had been friends with for 12 years. One of them told me straight out, "Well, Eric, you were you were really never a friend of me and my wife. You were just the guy who was married to my ex-wife."
That
And I'm
hurts.
thinking like, what? I brought you on trips. I brought you on ski trips. I brought you on hunting trips. I brought you fishing. I watched you. I babysit your children. I helped you move 2-3 times. I bent over upside and downwards for you and your wife. And I backed you up on everything in life just to get that one. That Eric, you were actually never our friend.
Wow. Just because
That
we
that
believe different. That's it.
yeah. So that one, I will admit, it still burns.
Yeah.
I won't lie to you. But okay, it's
I had a
but
similar
I made new friends, and later on, which is a story in itself, I met my lovely wife now, and we have children, and life is going good. My health improved. I'm still a fat ass, but I still have to work on that.
No, you just have a dad bod. We all get it.
Yeah.
We all have
So,
dad bods.
but yes, but life is going well. I'm very busy. I've joined a few organizations. We talked about that. We might do a separate video on
Yeah.
that. I became a Freemason in
That's going to be an
a
interesting
few years
one.
ago.
I'm excited about
Yeah,
that.
I'm going to be chewed up in the comment section from everyone. But
Welcome
that's
to my
fine.
life.
Yes, story of my life. But it's very people say, oh, that's a cult. No, it's not a cult. I said I grew up in the cult. I know exactly what
We
a
know what
cult
cults are,
is.
guys.
Yeah, I got the T-shirt for that one.
Yeah.
That one, that lodge I joined has helped me tremendously. It helped me grow a lot, and I see things very different now. I mean, Freemasonry is not a religion. It's a fraternity. It teaches a certain way how you know, but it is all there to try to improve you as a man.
Yeah.
And I can highly recommend it to any male. I mean, it's essentially for men. But yeah, again, we can take that in a different video.
Yeah, we'll talk about
I
that.
also, but that again has given me a lot of friends, and via my wife, I've been able to get a lot of good friends who are in a different, some are, some don't believe in God at all. Some are Pentecostal, some are evangelic, some are
But they're real. That's the important part.
Catholic, and even Mormons. I've befriended Mormons.
Yeah.
I don't really step into much of their faith. I'm, as long as they are willing to serve me coffee, I'm quite.
We can be friends.
I'm a happy camper. I draw my line on the. If you
coffee.
don't have coffee, I won't come to your house.
Yeah.
But
that's funny.
Yeah, you don't do coffee. I don't never understand why.
Yeah, I've had people explain to me, and even growing up in it, I didn't understand either, to be honest with you.
No.
And the more they try to explain it, the more I just scratch my head. It makes me more confused, and I'm just like, okay, I mean, if you don't want to, it's fine, right? Like, if you don't want to drink coffee, but don't be telling me I can't if you can't even explain why I can't. You know what I mean? Like,
no.
But okay, well, we'll kind of wrap this up here a little bit, Eric.
Yes.
Anyone who's listening, whether it be Jehovah's Witness, whether it be the WMSCOG, or any other high control group, what is one closing message that you want to give them that you think is going to help them on their journey leaving this organization, in your experience, what you've learned?
Be willing to do independent research is probably the best one I can say. Be humble enough to say that I was wrong, I was duped, I was tricked, I was brainwashed, whatever word you would like to use. And I grew up, both of us grew up believing that we had the one and only truth, and everyone else was
wrong.
Was right. I was wrong. Sorry. Now, as I said, I started Christianity from scratch, and it takes a lot of courage and being humble to say that you were wrong, and start over again.
Yeah.
If you want to leave it, if many people I've spoken with, and they accept what I say about organization, like Jehovah's Witnesses, but they are okay with living in that, and I would say that people who want to live as a Jehovah's Witness, I think that's fine. If that's what makes you happy, that is fine also. We have freedom of religion for a reason.
Yeah, and that's been my whole argument as well with the WMSCOG members is, I don't care if you believe in this this dead Korean guy as second coming Jesus. I don't care if you believe that this 80-year-old woman in Korea is God in the flesh. I don't care. But when the organization you believe in is deliberately hiding things from you, deceiving you, manipulating you, extorting you, exploiting you, and you're not even going to give yourself the decency of just examining the other side and at least examining the evidence unbiasedly, so you yourself can make a logical conclusion on what you want to follow, like a normal, rational person, that's where I have an issue. It's not the belief itself. You can believe whatever you want. You can believe that there's a pink elephant flying behind the moon, and that's your right as a human. That's your right as a person. But when the organization is tricking you, deceiving you, lying to you, you owe it to yourself just to do research. And guess what? If you do all the research, you look at everything, and you still want to be Jehovah's Witness, or you still want to be a WMSCOG member, I have nothing ill against you. I wish you nothing but the best. I wish you nothing but good health, good fortune, peace, and a happy and joyful life, and everything good. But
I think for Jehovah's Witnesses as well, if they just did two simple things, if they removed their shunning policy, so people could leave without all this terrible
nonsense.
things that usually happen, and maybe also end this silly blood doctrine that actually kills people and kills children, there wouldn't be a problem with Jehovah's Witnesses. With all, there wouldn't be in all these legal issues they are in now, especially in my country. They lost their state funding, So, but if you can, you can believe what you want. I'm all good. But if you're on the fence like I was for so many years, don't be a coward like me. Sit down, do research. If you're a Jehovah's Witness listening to this, go to JW Facts. It's no apostate stuff there. Everything is from court documents, and it's from the publications, it's from books. It's all extremely well documented. And if you can look at all these documents and still say that no, the 10 white boomers in New York are the one who is correct and everyone else is wrong, well, okay, have it your way. But
at least now you know.
Yeah.
And if that's the decision you make, then go for it.
Yeah.
But at least do your due diligence. Just like if you're going to get a job, you're going to buy a house, you're going to go on a trip, you're going to look at everything. You're going to look at the good, the bad, the ugly, and make a decision. But then when it comes to your life and your religious life, especially your soul, you're just like, no, I'm just going to take the just trust me, bro approach. It's like, come on, guys. You're better than that. You're smarter than that. Like, don't do that.
There was a podcaster who told me, I'll just say this quickly. He said that when he grew up, if he was going to buy a car or a computer, he would spend so many times reading reviews, reading tests, doing proper research, YouTube, everything. He would do this for every aspect of his life, except for his faith.
Bonkers.
Except for his religion. I mean, I can say that I did the same for a very long time.
I'm guilty.
And so yeah, don't be a coward. Do your research. That's I think that's my ending words.
Awesome. Well, I think no truer words have been spoken, my friend. So I'll just wrap this up then. If you guys like this video, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Also on the screen, you're going to see a recommended video and you're going to see a playlist. So go ahead and check them out. And then we're going to have a part 2 with Eric. We're going to talk about Freemasonry. And that's going to be interesting coming from my LDS background. That is kind of a weird religious off-brand of Freemasonry. I don't know. That's what we're going to talk about. So I'm kind of interested to dissect that one. But anyway, this is Find the Alternative with Eric, and we'll catch you on the next one. God bless, guys.